Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Joanna Nelson, and I'm with the Economic Development Department for the state of New Mexico. And you have joined us for one of our webinars in the COVID-19 webinar series that we are hosting weekly. We are joined today by Congressman Lujan, as well as Secretary Keys from the Economic Development Department and Secretary Witte from the Agricultural Department. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. We will post this to our New Mexico Economic Development YouTube channel. We will send the link out to the video after the presentation, and as well, we will send out the slides in a PDF. We did receive your questions that you submitted when you registered, and we passed those on to Congressman Lujan's office, and we will be moderating those questions as well as taking your questions during the presentation. I'd like to introduce Cabinet Secretary for the New Mexico Economic Development Department, Alicia Keys.
Thank you, Joanna. So welcome to another EDD webinar where we're trying to reach out and provide timely and accurate information during this COVID-19 health emergency. Today, we are honored to be joined by U.S. Congressman Ben Ray Lujan, who represents New Mexico's 3rd Congressional District in the United States Congress. Representative Lujan is a member of the House and Energy Commerce Committee and has been fighting for a robust national response to the COVID-19 pandemic in order to support the needs of New Mexico small businesses, frontline workers, and our agricultural communities. Representative Lujan will talk about the current situation in Congress with the CARES Act, any additional stimulus, especially money for state and local governments, and any updates on the Paycheck Protection program. We also have Secretary Witte with us, who is the Cabinet Secretary of Agriculture. Jeff comes from a ranching family in northern New Mexico. He graduated from New Mexico State University with a bachelor's degree in agriculture management and a master's degree in agriculture economics. Secretary Witte is dedicated to helping grow and sustain agricultural communities in New Mexico, and he will talk today about what is going on with rural assistance. So this webinar, in addition to all the other webinars that we've done, are available on our department's website, which is gonm.biz. And also, I would just like to mention that there's a comprehensive and accurate information on our statewide COVID-19 health emergency website, which the governor's office monitors, and that is at newmexico.gov. So Joanna, if you want to go on to the next slide real quickly. I'm just going to explain a few of the programs that our department has. The first one being the Business Loan Guarantee Program. This is where our department acts as the guarantor for your loan. We've had quite a few businesses reach out and do this through us. So if you're having any kinds of issues with the federal stimulus loans, please let us know, and we'll walk you through our Business Loan Guarantee Program. We also have our Zero Interest LIDA Loan Program Guarantee Program. This is a little bit, it's limited to expenditures for land, building, and infrastructure, mostly for manufacturing companies. And this can be used for lease abatement and mortgage assistance. We do have to work within the LIDA statute, so that's why the number of companies that can utilize this is smaller than with our Business Loan Guarantee Program. The SIC recently announced the New Mexico Recovery Fund, and we have the website right there where you can apply. This is for organizations for more than 40 employees. I did want to say before we move on to the next slide that our next webinar will be Thursday, May 7th at 2:15. Our Main Street community, our Main Street office within the Economic Development Division is offering websites each week for companies, and they range from how to market your company to how to set up a PayPal account. So definitely check those out. Joanna, if we can go on to the next slide. This is a program that was just instituted by the New Mexico Finance Authority, and they're offering emergency loans to healthcare critical service providers. So please go ahead and email the the email on the top of the page, business@nmfa.net. If this applies to you, we have just generally put the stipulations of the program on this slide, which we'll have on our website afterwards. But this is a new program that was just instituted, and I believe the applications will be available this coming Monday. If you go on to the next slide, Joanna. This is a program that we started in our department. It's called buynmlocal.com. It's Buy for Tomorrow Today. We had a lot of people who were sitting at home wondering how to help small businesses in New Mexico. Go on. If you're a business, register your site. We have over 800 businesses now. If you are somebody who wants to support a business, you can log on, buy gift certificates, buy any kind of goods that can be sent to you. I recently logged on and bought a massage from Betty's and a pair of shoes from a company in Las Cruces. And it's really fun shopping, and it's a really great way to support our local companies. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. And just a reminder to please complete your 2020 census, super important for this state. So log on 2020census.gov and do that. Okay, our next slide. We are, I think we're actually going to have, is it Secretary Joanna, is it Secretary Witte? Yes, we're going to ask Secretary Witte to give us a quick overview of resources for agricultural businesses in New Mexico. Secretary? I think you're still on mute, Secretary.
Oh, and you can't believe what I had to say. It was so good. Thank you, Alicia, and thank you, Congressman Lujan. You know, if one thing that we've noticed over this COVID crisis is that we are all in this together, and local means so much more than what it used to. And what we're finding in the ag world, and agriculture is under a tremendous amount of stress right now. What you see in the press is not too far out. You've got cattle and dairies that are suffering, while at the grocery stores there's nothing in the meat counters, and I think that's a sign of kind of where we're at. We had a great just-in-time inventory system and a lot of consolidation and a lot of structure in the agricultural world. When you consider that, and I'm going to get to where I'm going pretty quick, but when you consider the 50 packing facilities accounted for 98% of our meat output that went into the commercial market and into the market into the food service area, and when any of those go down, you end up with a little bit of stress. And so one of the things that's come to the Department of Agriculture, and one of the things we've been pushing for a long time, and in fact working with Secretary Keyes, is that value-added agriculture in New Mexico needs to be enhanced. A lot of discussion these days about local packing plants for meat processing. We've got the Secretary announced one. We did a joint announcement a few weeks ago about one in Las Vegas. Been working on another one that's coming on board in Mountain Air that'll be USDA inspected. But not only that, with the needs out there that are being assessed, we've sent, and the ag industry has sent over 700,000 pounds of food into the areas of need in the state, working through the food banks and the Emergency Operations Center. That has really proved to us that New Mexico has the capacity and the capabilities of serving at the local level. We stood up our website, just like Secretary Keyes did, to connect agricultural people that have products to sell direct to the consumer, gives them an opportunity to connect to the consumer. We're seeing that thing continue to grow. And you see our website there at the bottom of our page, www.nmda.nmsu.edu. Yes, we are a part of New Mexico State University, the Department of Agriculture, by the Constitution of the State of New Mexico. Tremendous amount of resources there. If you go to our COVID-19 link, you can access a lot of information that'll get you some resources that you might need. Another great website is the College of Agriculture at New Mexico State has their website. It's aces.nmsu.edu, and their backslash is COVID-19. Another great opportunity, and from there you can link to USDA, and I think the Congressman's going to talk about some of the federal programs that will come out. But it's really important that right now we think about taking care of our local folks. Look for those local sources. Our farmers markets will be coming on. Some of them have been operating, and you really want to get out and get that local fresh fruits and vegetables and livestock. As we move into the recovery phase of the state, the governor stood up a number of subgroups that we're heading up. We're heading up the livestock one, the farm one, veterinarians and shelters, dairy, and then we're participating in fairs and in grocery stores. And we're really wanting to make sure that on the fair side, that our kids that are involved in 4-H and FFA have an opportunity to show the animals they've purchased and gotten, getting ready for the fall season. And maybe have an opportunity to go through those sales. So there's a lot of good things happening. It's a tough time though. These are tough challenges that we're going through, but together we'll get through it all as one. So with that, I think I'll shift gears and we'll go to the Congressman, and then we can answer questions as they come up. If that works, Alicia?
Yes, perfect. Congressman, if you could give us an overview and an update on the federal stimulus program, that would be great.
Well, thank you, Secretary Keys and Secretary Witte, and a special thank you to the entire New Mexico Economic Development Department as well for the discussions that you've been hosting on a regular basis and sharing information. Last week, I went back to Washington to vote on an interim emergency funding package to address the COVID-19 pandemic and provide much needed support for small businesses, for hospitals, frontline workers, and expanded testing. The legislation included $370 billion for small businesses, which included $310 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. There was an additional $50 billion in emergency disaster loans and $10 billion in emergency disaster grants. Given the concerns that we heard from community lenders, though, and credit unions and community development financial institutions, it was important that some changes be made to the PPP program. And that's why $30 billion was set aside for lenders with assets of less than $10 billion, and another $30 billion for a total of $60 for lenders with assets of less than $50 billion. Think about the community banks, independent community bankers, credit unions, community development financial institutions, some of the smaller financial institutions across America, and especially across New Mexico, who have better relationships and are closer tied with communities across New Mexico. That's where those dollars went to make sure that more loans could be extended. And last weekend, I held 2 virtual roundtables with New Mexico independent community bankers and credit unions, as well as experts from the U.S. House of Representatives Small Business Committee and the Small Business Administration, to make sure that we were able to take those questions and get ready for the portal being opened up on Monday morning, which is just a couple days ago. The SBA started accepting applications for this new funding on Monday, and we're happy to see more New Mexico businesses that are, I believe, have now been approved, but that we're able to get those loans in. Prior to this bill being passed, New Mexico small businesses secured 8,277 loans, totaling about $1.4 billion. Now, when you calculate that per capita, my concern was that we were about $600 million short. And then that's another reason why we encourage and require more support to those local lenders across New Mexico. The economic recovery of New Mexico depends critically on having all of our small businesses intact and ready to rebuild. And we learned this morning that nearly all the community lenders and credit unions have completely cleared their backlog of Paycheck Protection loan applications. That's really good news. Most of the lenders are soliciting new customers. And so we are hearing that in some cases, these lenders are submitting loan applications, getting SBA loan approval, and dispersing funds within a single day. So community lenders have the bandwidth to process new loan applications, and many are taking on new customers. So small businesses out across New Mexico in need of a Paycheck Protection loan, please reach out to those community lenders right away. And that's why I appreciate that Secretary Keys and Secretary Witte are hosting these roundtables. This is a good place for us to be in New Mexico. So small businesses that are out there, please apply, and apply soon. There's about $200 billion left, but this will go quickly. The interim package also included $75 billion for hospitals and frontline workers and $25 billion for expanded testing. Passing this legislation was an important step, but it's clear that more work has to be done to help everyone that's struggling, and struggling through no fault of their own, but because of the coronavirus. That's why I and House Democrats are committed to passing a phase 4 response package to bolster our public health and economic response. A cornerstone of that package must dramatically increase direct assistance to local, state, and tribal governments. That's why last week I introduced legislation that we now have, I believe, over 150 or 160 co-sponsors. We're growing every day, Democrats and Republicans, to provide that support to local governments. They desperately need these resources to avoid furloughs and cuts that will weaken their ability to respond to the public health crisis and also set back our economic recovery. These funds will be the difference between police, firefighters, teachers, everyone on the front lines that provide these important resources to keeping their jobs or to losing them. And that's why I've been proud to work with Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, the advocacy coming from Speaker Brian Egoff, as well as Majority Leader Peter Wirth as well. It's important that we all work together to get this done. So we'll keep working to push this initiative, and we look forward to the questions today. But again, appreciate the leadership from our great governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, as well as Secretary Keys and Secretary Witte. Thanks for having me, everybody.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for those updates. One of the things that I love about New Mexico is just how accessible people like yourself are, and the fact that you're willing to get on this webinar and answer people's questions. So we're going to move on to that first question, and Secretary Witte, I think you're going to read it out. Just your microphone one more time.
Am I muted?
There you
Or
are.
am I muted? Okay, I thought I clicked it off. All right, good. So we get a lot of questions, especially about these federal programs. But if the first question is, if I'm a farmer or rancher, can I apply for the PPP, the EIDL, and the Pandemic Unemployment Insurance Act simultaneously?
Number one, so farmers and ranchers, especially Secretary Witte, we want to make sure that they know that they do qualify and they can apply for the Paycheck Protection Program, loan program through existing SBA lenders or through any federally insured depository institution, credit unions, the Farm Credit System institutions who are also enrolled in SBA loan programs. So a lot of those existing partners, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which you also mentioned, farmers and ranchers and nonprofit organizations, C3s, by the way, with fewer than 500 employees, are now eligible to obtain the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, including the new emergency EIDL grants. But there's been a little bit of confusion here. So Congress clarified, for those of you taking notes here, in section 101C of the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act, that farmers and ranchers are eligible for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and loan funding. It was unfortunate that there was a misinterpretation by the Trump administration in this area, but that's why Congress worked to correct that and get that clarification in there, Mr. Secretary. And the SBA continues to process these emergency economic injury disaster loan grant applications that were submitted prior to April 16th, but has not announced when or if it will begin accepting new grant applications. So we're hoping to get that guidance coming forward, because as I said, there was $10 billion in new grant funding also included. Now there's another program called the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, the PUA, that farmers and ranchers who are not eligible for regular state unemployment or eligible to apply for pandemic unemployment assistance. So they can apply for that program. In addition, we're waiting for the United States Department of Agriculture to provide guidance on the $16 billion that was included for the coronavirus food assistance program. And this program will provide direct support to agricultural producers where prices and market supply chains have been impacted by COVID. And we've been getting a lot of questions as far as, can you apply for both? The simple answer is yes. The complicated part of that is that you can't apply for one when, for example, you're covering the cost of your mortgage or rent. You can't use both of them for that same cost. You can't use both programs to cover the payroll cost, for example. So you have to be really mindful of how those programs work. And that's why those of us in the delegation here in New Mexico, we've been pushing the SBA, the USDA, and the Treasury for as clear guidance as we can get out to small businesses so that they don't get in trouble down the road. And we're also working to provide maximum flexibility so that no one's penalized as they're able to secure these funds to help their small businesses.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And so as the Congressman said earlier, and I just want to reiterate, the funding is not out. So if you have not applied for the PPP or EIDL yet, please do so, and tell your friends who have companies to do so also. The next question comes to us from Rancho de Taos. What federal assistance is available for first-time business owners, Congressman?
So from the federal perspective, with all the partnerships that we have with the state of New Mexico, the work that Secretary Keys, Secretary Witte, Secretary McCamley, he's been real busy over at Workforce Solutions. So first-time small business owners qualify for each of these programs, the Paycheck Protection Program. So that program Secretary Keys just laid out, if you've not applied for one of those programs, please reach out to your local community bank, your local credit union, or any of those farm service lenders and talk to them. Get in the queue right away. I would not hesitate. As a matter of fact, it's 4 o'clock now, so you still have an hour to reach out to those bankers. Get on the phone or get over there if you can. Also, the economic injury disaster loans and the pandemic unemployment assistance. You qualify for all three. Now, again, I want to remind you, the programs can be used simultaneously, but not for the same expenses. So please make sure, you know, all those great businesses across New Mexico, and especially this question from Ranchos de Taos, please make sure that you get out there. And the bank up in Taos has been doing great work. As a matter of fact, they were one of the leaders with the number of loans they were able to get out in the first group and getting ready for the second one. So Angel does a great job up there.
Great. Our next question is coming in from Bloomfield. I am a small business with no employees. Where can I get help?
So Secretary Keys, a lot of these answers might sound the same, but it's through those same programs. If you're a small business with no employees, you still qualify for that Paycheck Protection Program because there are costs associated with that business that can be and will be forgiven. Also, the same thing with that disaster loan program, the pandemic unemployment assistance. And again, just be mindful of how you're going to do this, but you do qualify for each and every one of those programs. In addition to that, there's also a program through the state of New Mexico for unemployment. So if you're a self-proprietor, you know, folks that you're a gig worker, or even think about folks that if you're like an Uber driver and you contract with Uber to provide those services, you also qualify for support, whether it's through these programs or specifically filing for that unemployment as well. So you have a little bit of latitude there as well.
And like the Congressman said, some of these questions are a little repetitive, but we want to get them in. Our next one, it's actually a very similar question from Rio Rancho and then also from Abiquiu. More clarification on what is a grant and what is a loan, especially if you receive PPP and EIDL. With ongoing changes, how can small businesses ensure they're meeting all the SBA PPP loan forgiveness requirements?
So this is an important question, but it's a question that we still don't have guidance from the Small Business Administration. As a matter of fact, this question came up during our roundtables with the independent community bankers, as well as the credit unions. Every business owner that I talk to across New Mexico, the lenders, they're all asking this important question. And it's not just being asked in New Mexico, it's being asked across America. So we are still waiting here in the United States for guidance from the Small Business Administration on the rules for the Paycheck Protection Program loan forgiveness. Now, during a call earlier today, the SBA State Director made it sound like we should be getting some guidance within the next few days. So I'm hoping by early next week, because it's long overdue. So we'll continue to push the SBA to provide clarity here, because small businesses, lenders, everyone needs to know when that forgiveness is going to go into effect and all the guidance there. But the one thing I would say is, while you can use the programs together, don't use the programs for the same costs. That's one thing to give you a little bit of guidance while the SBA gets clear guidance out. And there should be no such confusion with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. The EIDL grant, which is different from the loan, is up to $10,000 and does not have to be repaid. So go after those grants, and we're waiting for that new portal to be opened up. Now, the EIDL, the loan associated with those disasters, is up to $2 million and has a 30-year term and an interest rate right now at 3.75. We're still trying to push those down as low as we can, but that's where that is right now. And as soon as we get that guidance, we'll work with Secretary Keys, Secretary Witte, the governor, every lender in New Mexico to get that information out. We're trying to get it all on one page, so that way small businesses can follow that in the most efficient manner possible.
And just to add on to what the congressman said, there have been some major issues with this SBA rollout. I know that people have heard about them in the press. One of them is that the SBA hasn't given us these guidelines, or given the loans of the lenders these guidelines. But the other one is also their websites are crashing. They're crashing for not only the companies, but also the businesses. So it hasn't been the most smooth process on that side, but one of the recommendations that we continue to make is, if you're having issues, keep on trying, keep on keeping on.
And then Secretary Keys, I know you've reminded the state of this as well with all the small businesses, but also partner with the local SBDC as well. They're there to provide you support, and they give you great guidance, and they're a great partner of Secretary Keys and the small businesses across New Mexico.
They are. That's a really good point. There's 19 offices across New Mexico. Yeah. They're giving classes every morning online. They actually have people answering the phone. Russell Wyrick, their director, has been amazing, super helpful. You know, these programs are hard to figure out, so don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to call them, to call us, and we will really walk you through it. We have a hotline, which at the end of our presentation we'll put up there, and we have people on the line answering phones all day long, answering your questions, not only about business, but we can point you in the right direction for any kind of health issues, any kind of workforce issues. So we're really here to try to help you and hold your hand through this process. So our next question comes from Albuquerque. Congressman, how are you partnering with Cdfis?
Well, first off, Cdfis are such an important part of our community. The work they're doing, they're so close to the community. They're involved, small businesses, nonprofits. They provide education, and they provide that financial support. So in the most recently passed interim CARES package that we passed just last Thursday, signed into law Friday, Saturday, Congress set aside $30 billion of the Paycheck Protection program funds for Cdfis, those small insured depository institutions and credit unions, and those independent community banks with assets below $10 billion. Again, one of the concerns that I and many others had with the PPP program, the way that it was first rolled out, is it seemed that the largest banks, you know, mostly those Wall Street banks, and some of the largest chains in America, we were reading about those big loans, right? $20 million that went to a steakhouse, $10 million that went to a burger chain, and small businesses in New Mexico were not getting any word. And so working with Cdfis was a big part of this program, and I really credit them, the credit unions and the independent community bankers, for helping as many small businesses. And again, you're gonna hear us reminding you of this. Right now, they're all caught up. They're waiting for more small businesses to come in. $200 billion left in the program as of earlier today. Now that may have changed. So please get in as soon as you can.
I'm going to ask Joanna to actually weigh in here, if you don't mind. Can you highlight a few of the CDFIs that we've been using that we've had some success with?
Sure, Secretary Keys, thank you. We have been working with Dream Spring, the Lift Fund. Those have been two CDFIs that have really been aggressive and proactive getting applications through. We also heard that there was a unique collaboration that happened between the Albuquerque Community Foundation, the South Valley Economic Development Center, and the International District in Albuquerque to work with people and offer technical assistance to get applications done. So we've been really thankful for all of those organizations.
Great,
And
thank you.
they're ready to go. They're accepting applications as we speak.
Fantastic. I also want to, Joanna leads our finance team, and she's also fluent in Spanish. So if you have anyone that only speaks Spanish and needs information, definitely give our office a call, and you will be connected with Joanna. The next question is more towards the census, which is great. So Congressman, the 3rd District is traditionally a huge census challenge. And now there's COVID-19. What are you doing to improve the count?
So Secretary Keys, this is an important question. I appreciate you asking it and the interest in this. Everyone here knows if we have a 1% undercount with the census in New Mexico, it'll cost us over $700 million. For every person that's not counted in New Mexico, it's $3,700 per year, $37,000 over 10 years. And I'll get into what that money is for. So this matters. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, the U.S. Census Bureau suspended all field operations just 4 days after they began. So there was a big effort to get the rollout ready. People were ready to knock on those doors. They started. We were getting some good responses, and then they were all suspended. So this included efforts by census workers to hand deliver forms to households that don't have standard addresses or receive their mail at post office boxes. So a lot of door knocking. The suspension of the field operations by the U.S. Census Bureau as a result of COVID-19 has left nearly 18% of New Mexico without the ability to easily participate in the 2020 census. All of the early indications show that New Mexico is a hard to count state. That's how they categorize us, with 42% of the state not having connectivity at this time. So counties like Taos, Catron, Mora, Rio Arriba, Harding, among other areas, are hard to reach communities because we're rural in nature. And this has resulted in artificially lower than average response rates and poses yet another burden for our state to overcome for a complete count. So my staff has been in touch with the census complete count committees in each of these counties, reminding them to do all they can to reach out to households and update them. I personally have been doing informational videos during all my radio interviews and other interviews when I visit with journalists. I've been encouraging them to cover the census and challenging each and every one of us that does have internet connectivity, that is able to stay in touch with our loved ones, especially those that are a little bit older. Work with them to get the census filled out. You can go to census.gov to get that done. There's a 1-800 number if you don't have access to the internet that you can call and you can get that taken care of. And also keep an eye for those forms coming in the mail. So the Census Bureau recently announced that they plan to resume field operations June 1st. Now that's if everything opens up, but that's the date, the target date right now. The 164,000 New Mexico households who are supposed to receive a hand-delivered census form should receive that packet no later than July 9th. So just keep your eyes on that, and we'll get some more media coverage around this. But as of mid-April, only 37% of New Mexico households have responded. So the national average is 48%. We need to catch up. Again, this is real money for roads, bridges, water, wastewater, senior centers, education, food programs, investments to help Secretary Keys attract more businesses to New Mexico and provide more support and added value to every small business we have in our state, and for Secretary Witte as well to help with all of our rural programs, universities, schools. So this matters. Considering the crisis, I strongly support the Census Bureau's request to extend the deadline to deliver the results to the president as well. Currently, that's due at the end of the calendar year, but given what's happening with this national pandemic and global pandemic, we need Congress to act to extend that deadline so we can get an accurate count across the state of New Mexico.
Thank you. I did it just recently and it took about 5 minutes. So
That's
as
quick.
you're listening to us, you can multitask. And I was a little frightened to do it because I didn't know whether I should count my kids who were in college or not, but it actually just walks you right through it. So very, very simple. And your children, if they're above the age of 18, should also fill it out. So, okay, moving on to our next question. How are businesses expected to survive the increased unemployment tax that will be used to recover unemployment funds?
This is a very important question. Now, there's not been a conversation yet that has detailed that there will be an unemployment tax, but as the unemployment fund needs to be replenished, there needs to be a conversation with what revenue will be required and all of the channels and tools that are available to help replenish that. So first, we have to provide assistance to individuals in need, and that's critically important. So Congress has acted to provide recovery rebates. Those are those direct payments that many people across the country received, which was a $1,200 direct payment, which is a refundable tax credit for individuals making up to $75,000, and then couples up to $150,000 that are married, and $500 for each qualifying dependent under the age of 16, phasing out at $98,000, I believe, for those direct payments. And then the pandemic unemployment assistance, which provides unemployment benefits for self-employed gig workers. I went over that a little bit earlier, and that includes small business owners. So you also qualify for that program. And then the federal pandemic unemployment assistance, which provides $600 a week in additional unemployment compensation to workers with all types of unemployment benefits. And that's through July 31st of 2020. And then the pandemic emergency unemployment compensation, which provided an additional 13 weeks. So here's the thing though, with the unemployment insurance trust funds, we all have to work together, states and the federal government, to ensure their solvency. And that's why I support the National Governors Association's proposal to provide federal grants or complete loan forgiveness to replenish depleted state unemployment trust funds. This again was a national health emergency, a pandemic. And that's why the federal government, I'm hopeful, will listen to much of the advocacy that's coming from us. And in addition to that, one of those bills that I introduced that we've been advocating for more state stabilization funds. Speaker Pelosi recently announced a $1 trillion proposal, $500 billion to states, $500 billion to local and state governments during this time, and also to provide them maximum flexibility for lost revenue. So let's all work together to get this one done and make sure that we're all part of that conversation.
Great, thank you. So the next two questions I think we've answered, which are specific guidelines on the forgiveness under PPP,
Yep.
and you think that's coming down and in the next few days?
We're hopeful, and we continue to hear lenders are pushing, small businesses are pushing, chambers of commerce are pushing, members of Congress are pushing, and governors. So we'll just keep on this one until we get that information.
Perfect. And then where our next question is from Espanola. I know there was help for cities with more than 500,000 people. Has there been progress for help for smaller populations?
So this has been a big frustration of mine. Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader of the U.S. Senate, when he was asked about why he did not support providing more help to local governments, especially those with populations smaller than 500,000, which, by the way, in New Mexico is every city and county that's not Albuquerque or Bernalillo County. So while I've been very grateful that Albuquerque and Bernalillo County qualified for that program with direct payments, every other county, town, community, village was all left out. Mitch McConnell's response was, local governments should file for bankruptcy to make themselves whole. Now, we all know that that is the worst of a response that anyone could provide. That's why I introduced the Coronavirus Community Relief Act. I talked about it earlier, $250 billion for local governments and tribal governments without a population floor, meaning that every local government, village, county, tribal government could receive direct payment based on population. And that's what we should be doing. Again, these are emergencies that we are facing across the country. Well, I'm not encouraged by the response we've had from Leader Mitch McConnell, and there's still a question coming from President Trump. Last Thursday, President Trump indicated that support for state and local governments would be included in the next round of negotiations. But on Monday of this week, the president said he was not interested in providing that support. So I'm hopeful that the president will listen to the National Governors Association, again, 26 Republican governors, a part of that, mayors, county commissioners, local government leaders, and that we'll be able to work with him, and then we'll get Mitch McConnell on board. But House Democrats, we released yesterday, and Speaker Pelosi outlined the $1 trillion in assistance program, and that's to help fill all of those budget holes. And again, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, Speaker Egoff, Peter Wirth, the leader in New Mexico, they've announced that special session. So the most help that could be sent to the state so that Democrats and Republicans, members of the legislature, and the governor, if they get that help, we don't have to see those cuts into local programs. We can get help to improve the solvency and strengthen the solvency of the unemployment fund as well. And so I'm hopeful that we can get something moving. It's a priority for me in the next legislative package, and we're already working on that.
I can't imagine what it is right now to be in these discussions, and you know, it's frustrating, and it's yes. Anyway, listening to you, it's fascinating. Our next question,
Secretary Keys, just there. A big part of this is sharing the perspective, right? When that 500,000 population floor came out, some of our members thought, oh, well, that sounds reasonable. Well, those members represent the largest cities in America. And then some of our colleagues said, well, let's use some of the community block grant formulas to help these communities. And a group of members said, well, that sounds okay too. Well, a bunch of us represent districts that have communities smaller than 50,000. And we said, all you're going to do is create another problem and a group of folks that are left out. So it really matters to be at that table and sharing our New Mexico perspective and our values and principles, to your point, and making sure that we're able to garner support from those that represent different parts of America.
And I think that's why these type of webinars are so important, because we get feedback from people. And, you know, we don't, excuse me, my dogs love to eat at 4:21 and it's 4:21. So I will try to mute as much as possible for the next few questions, the next 9 minutes. But I was just on a task force call with retail establishments on how, you know, how to reopen. And it's really, you know, we don't even know the questions to ask sometimes until we hear the feedback from the people that are out there actually working with customers. So thank you all, not only for being panelists, but also for the people that have written in their questions. Our next question is from Las Vegas, New Mexico, where my family is originally from. How can the state and federal aid help local efforts to distribute produce to those in need?
Well, Secretary Witte, you probably have you know, a bunch of information to share here as well. I know that the United States Department of Agriculture Marketing Service is launching the $3 billion to Farms to Families Food Boxes program as part of a larger coronavirus food assistance program as well, created with CARES Act funding. So that's one important tool. This program allows regional and local distributors to apply to the USDA for federal funds to purchase fresh produce from farmers. So think farm to table, including food boxes for food banks and other nonprofits, assisting those in need. In addition, FEMA and the New Mexico National Guard and the governor's office are also working closely with producers, distributors, tribal communities, local communities to deliver food and water through the Coordinated Emergency Operations Center. And that was something the governor got off the ground right away. And I know both of you are a part of that. And then the New Mexico Coalition of Community Foundations, Altogether New Mexico Relief Fund, is also working to address immediate needs in New Mexico communities, including procurement of food for at-risk communities. So if you are a local producer, you can reach out to the New Mexico Coalition of Community Foundations, and Secretary Keys, we can work to get that information out to anyone that needs it. But also anyone out there that needs food, the governor set up a hotline as well. So please just reach out to those hotlines listed on the governor's website, newmexico.gov. And we know we've been using that as a tool. You can also reach out to my office and we can get you connected. So community organizations in need of food, communities that need food, or we know seniors, children, students, whoever it is, please let us know so we can all work together to maximize that. And I don't know if Secretary Witte has anything to add to that, Secretary Keys.
Okay, yeah, no, you answered it great. People have been contacting us, and we've been connecting folks with the food banks, and the food banks have been contacting us. We expect a lot of interest with especially with these new USDA programs as they get rolled out. And you know, we received a call one night, and we're able to secure 80,000 pounds of food immediately from our local growers to get it to the places in need. But there's more of that, and we've just got to be able to keep connecting. So yeah, we're working. Call us, let us know if any of the farmers out there want to connect with the food banks or any of the folks that are buying. We're ready to help you out.
And as Secretary Witte said earlier on, there are LEDA funds to help with if you want to create a processing plant, if you want to make your tomatoes into salsa. Economic development has LEDA funds. And so just get the word out there that if you want to do that or talk to us about that, we do have funds. Just last week we announced High Plains, which is a new meat processing facility just outside of Las Vegas. There's also C4 Farms. We did a great LEDA deal with them early on. That's a family-owned organization near Tierra Maria. So also order beef from these places. It's amazing. It's grass-fed. You can't get anything better. Yeah, it's really good stuff.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
So I'm going to do, let's see, we have 5 more minutes left with the Congressman. How will nonprofits be included in economic stimulus aid at the state and federal levels beyond the PPP loan?
So I can speak to it from the federal perspective. Right now, Secretary Keys, nonprofits that are 501c3s, and that's an important note there, are eligible for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and Grant Program as well. Now, here's the problem though, is that other nonprofits like 501c6s, which are Chamber of Commerce's in our communities, think about them, they're not eligible right now. And this sadly has been a dispute in the Congress on partisan lines. And so we as Democrats, we've been encouraging the inclusion of 501c6s. I know I've been visiting with quite a few Chamber of Commerce's here in New Mexico that provide all that important work and support to all the entrepreneurs throughout the state. And so we need to find a way to get them included, and that will be part of our advocacy going into this next round of negotiations as well. Again, small businesses, nonprofits, workers, individuals, local governments, public employees, everyone has been negatively impacted because of the coronavirus through no fault of their own. And it's during times like this that we come together. During national emergencies, the federal government comes together, we work together to respond. And I know these are tough times, but that's why everyone needs to be working together to provide maximum support and relief. And that's why I'm hopeful that groups like 501c6s will even be able to qualify for those same programs like the 501c3s. And then let's see what else we might be able to put together in a thoughtful manner with state, federal, local partnerships to help make that happen. And I know there's also other philanthropy groups that are out there that have been helping these organizations, and just, you know, God bless them for the work they're doing as well. They're heaven sent. But we all, as you all pointed out, Secretary Keys and Secretary Witte, we're all in this together. And I hope that that's something of a spirit that we can all embrace. You know, a little more patience, more thoughtfulness, treating people without respect and dignity that is so desperately needed, and then all rolling up our sleeves to help one another as well and doing our part. So hopefully this is an area where we can get some growth and some more answers as well.
Thank you. Someone requested that we say the name of, it's C4 up in Tierra Maria, and they do have a website and you can order beef off that. One last question before we wrap up, and it is for both Secretary Witte and the Congressman. What efforts are you making to ensure producers have adequate and affordable labor during harvest season? And this question is coming from Deming.
Secretary Witte, do you want to jump in first? Or you want me to jump in?
Go ahead and I'll clean up.
So I appreciate that, sir. So the SBA Paycheck Protection Program, as I said, is and was available to farmers and ranchers, and we provided clarifying language. So again, if you have 500 or fewer employees, to keep employees on the payroll. But here's one of the problems, and this was a place that we went back and forth with our Republican colleagues in the Senate and with the White House. The PPP program cannot pay for seasonal workers who do not maintain residency in the United States. So we've been hearing from a lot of farmers, you know, chili farmers, think about California, all parts of America where our food is grown. If hired farm labor is only used seasonally and employs workers who maintain a principal residence in the US, there might not be enough labor costs to allow forgiveness of the Paycheck Protection Program. So anyone that, you know, our chili farmers down there, they know exactly what I'm talking about when I describe that aspect of how their payroll is put together. And that's one of the areas that we're hoping we can get more support. Now, there is some positive news, but still work to be done here. On April 20th, I believe it was the Department of Homeland Security and the United States Citizenship Immigration Services that published a temporary final rule, and I know that sounds funny, temporary final rule, but that's what it's called, to amend certain H-2A visa requirements that would allow businesses to start employing temporary agricultural workers who are in the United States with a valid H-2A status on the state or on the start date of hire listed on that as well. And so that's something that we can provide you more information on. I'm sure Secretary Witte can help you with that direction as well. And then additionally, the USCIS is temporarily amending its regulations to allow the H-2A workers to stay beyond the 3-year maximum allowable period of stay in the United States to help with some of this. But there's a lot more work that's going to be needed in this area as well.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And thank you, Congressman, for your work on this. Ag labor is a challenge anyway. Whether you had COVID or not, we've always had a shortage. And when you've got workers who may be concerned about working in the fields next to other fellow workers and the possibility of getting spread. So some of the things, we're in constant contact with USDA, and USDA has actually set up a hotline, H2A, USDA labor, ag labor, I think aglabor.usda.gov, where we can send, if we have issues, we can actually send there and we get a pretty good response. They've been working with the State Department, especially on the H2A's program, making sure we can get our employees, if they're coming across from Mexico or wherever, over here and able to do the work. On top of that, we are working through this recovery task force to make sure we've got those COVID safe practices put out there so that you can ensure that your workers won't have, you can mitigate any of the potential for spread and take that due care. But it's a challenge. We're working on it every day. It seems like trying to make sure that we have the ability to get the labor here, the folks that want to work, get them here and let the farmers get their crops in the ground and then harvested this fall.
And then the only other thing I would add, Secretary Witte, is, again, just a reminder for that coronavirus food assistance program. Many of us have been advocating for maximum flexibility for livestock, dairy, and specialty crop producers. which we predominantly have in New Mexico, for that $16 billion fund. And so we'll keep pushing that in that area. And again, I thank Secretary Witte for his advocacy. He's been on the phones a lot with the delegation, with what he's been hearing from ranchers and farmers across New Mexico, and making sure that these programs work for them. So I really appreciate his passion for this and his understanding of what New Mexico families are going through.
Thank you.
So it is at the end of our hour. We've actually gone a few minutes over. I want to thank our panelists, Secretary Witte and Congressman Lujan, and everybody who wrote in questions and is listening. We are here for you. Please email us and call us, and we're collaborating together on a state and federal level, and so it feels great in that it always brings out the best in New Mexicans, these type of events. Congressman, did you want to say a few words before we sign off?
Just to everyone that participated today and that may be watching on YouTube down the road as well, just continue to spread the word, share ideas, share information, share those hardship stories, because that's where better policy comes from, is addressing those challenges. To all of our brothers and sisters across New Mexico, just thank you for what you're doing, for looking after others, for helping to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Again, we're all in this together, and it's going to be important that we continue to work together to look after our communities. And then, as Secretary Key said, shop local. Make sure you find all these incredible New Mexico businesses, help them out, provide support. They have all those goods and services that you need. There's nothing better than New Mexico beef. So anyone watching this from across the United States, you better start buying New Mexico beef. It will change your life. And if you need a little bit of extra, just buy some of our chili. And that's chili with an E, not chili with an I. You make sure you get our good chili in you, red or green. It works together. Our crops across New Mexico, and crazy, amazing pistachios and pecans and our cheese. And look, get to know New Mexico, and as soon as you're able to, travel back out here and just see what we have to offer as well. To you, Secretary Keys, for your leadership, for your vision, for the work you've done. You help bring more businesses to our beautiful state. You were instrumental in those new studios getting opened up in Albuquerque and the work you did with the film industry. But you know how to get added value for all of our businesses as well. And I really appreciate that. I look forward to continuing to learn from both of you, and continuing to learn from all of our brothers and sisters across New Mexico as well. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much. Everyone stay safe and to stay connected with us. Thank you.
All right. And
Have
sorry
a great
that sorry we kept the dogs from getting that meal for about 10 minutes. So we apologize.
George is a little upset right now.
Take care, everybody.
Okay.